Share this recording with the folks back at your school sites and essentially start thinking about how the dashboard, how this particular tool, how this set of tools weaves into the work that you're already doing. What decisions does it help you make with more information at your fingertips, with a little bit more evidence to go off of? And so we're hoping that this you find a valuable thing. A couple of quick things we want to plug, and I'm sure Noah and Latoya will also share with you guys that on the 20th of this month, they'll have a virtual convening. Usually they have a conference in the fall where they invite folks to come and basically talk shop with districts from all over the state about how they're using the tool. And we think that that would be a really valuable thing that basically bookends with this particular event, give you guys a chance to look at and examine the different use cases for the tools in the dashboard. And on top of that, we've mentioned to many of you that Stephanie Evergreen will be joining us next month, December 10th, and then again in February. We do have links to register for that now, so we'll be sharing those with you in the chat at some point. But without further ado, I want to welcome our two guests. I'm going to turn it over to them and let them kind of take you on this journey for the next 3 hours. Thank you, Latoya. Thank you, Noah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Latoya Buford, and just to do a little introduction, I have been with CORE for over a year now as a data strategist, and my job is to support our partners with onboarding and getting them acquainted with the dashboard and communications, as well as just being support. And then I also have Noah here, who's going to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. Noah Bookman. I'm with the CORE Data Collaborative as well, and been working at CORE with CORE districts for, gosh, about 7 years. And previous to CORE, I was the director of performance management at the Los Angeles Unified School District. I've also held roles around educator effectiveness in LAUSD and around enrollment and student assignment at the Oakland Unified School District. Very much looking forward to being here. Really fun to be together. Actually, I think the partnership with Tulare County, has been a bit in the making. And I was telling the team this morning how excited we are about how much your data is in the system. And we know it's been a little bit of a weird data year. So we're hoping that today you're able to leverage the information we share, both to think back historically, but also to look at what we do know about last school year. And then we'll share with you about some tools that you might be interested in, or some of you already starting to explore during the current school year. So we'll cover a bit of everything. And just very pleased to have the opportunity to be with everybody today.
Great, thanks, Noah. So first, I just want to let you guys know that if you want to follow along, the presentation is in this folder, and I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat box. Or could you do that for me, Noah? Put the link in the chat box so you guys can follow along. And what I also like to do is, just before we get into the actual presentation, is just do a quick reminder about why we are here. To use more than just test scores to measure strengths and weaknesses in schools, and to identify those in need of improvement, and to, of course, make a change. And this is a quote from James Baldwin. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So this is just an overview of what we're going to cover today. We're going to do an introduction to CORE, how we started, what CORE is all about. We're going to review the Data Collaborative. We're going to do a quick introduction to the dashboard. We're going to do a nice growth review, because that's one of our areas that we really want to highlight and focus on. So we're going to do a deep review of that. We're also going to do a deep dive into all of the analytics on our dashboard and start bringing up questions about how you can use it. And then importantly, most importantly, we want you guys to dig into your data. So we're going to spend some time on having you explore the data. It could be within one of your districts or school, or you could even just look at Tulare County data if you don't have data in yet. And then we're going to round it off with Noah's going to talk about additional analytics that we have, and then questions, next steps, and takeaways. I also want to just encourage you all, if you have questions, please drop it in the chat. I'd like to make this as interactive as possible so you don't have to wait for me to ask if you guys have questions. Just go ahead and pop them in the chat box and we'll make sure we get to them. So first I want to start off just to describe the measures of the dashboard. The dashboard provides a clear and timely review of progress, including early previews of California dashboard measures. Those measures include test results, English learner progress, chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, graduation rates, age, and A through G completion. But we also have our locally driven measures, which is our student academic growth, social and emotional measures, student culture and climate, high school readiness, and next level reporting, and more. Within these measures, you can also look at your LCAP views, trends over time. There's some gap trends analysis that you can do, and you can also compare similar schools. California dashboard measures that are included are test results, EL progress, chronic absenteeism, suspension rates, and graduation rates that I already mentioned. There's also something that's coming very soon, probably within the next month, is a map view. So it says geospatial viz, but those are coming in the next month. Really cool report that's being added to the system. And also the folder link includes an overview document as well, if you want to share that with anyone. So just to start off, what is CORE? CORE districts is made up of 8 of California's largest school districts, including Sacramento, Oakland, San Francisco, Fresno, Los Angeles, Garden Grove, Long Beach, and Santa Ana. The organization was founded in 2010 out of efforts between Long Beach and Fresno. These efforts grew to include other large urban districts to implement new academic standards and improve teacher and administrator training. In around 2013, district collaboration and local control at the invitation of the U.S. Department of Education and the CDE, the CORE district applied for a secured No Child Left Behind waiver to use more than just test scores to measure strengths and weaknesses in schools and to identify those in need of improvement. Between 2013 and 2015, the CORE district developed the School Improvement Quality System, which is the basis for the CORE data system today. And then in 2016, at the request of several districts and counties and charter managements, the CORE Collaborative was launched to offer LEAs through California the ability to examine school performance and growth data. So through research and collaboration, educators in the collaborative can now access a complete picture of school performance, including information that is not collected or available by the state. The CORE dashboard allows educators to preview prior year results in the summer in order to support back to school data discussions. Today, the CORE data system includes over 2.5 million students, over 100,000 teachers, more than 190 school districts, 10 county office of education, and over 3,000 schools, and the CORE data collaborative is still growing. So just to give you an idea of how districts join CORE, a county or district is what we call a PEA, or Partner Education Agency. They join sort of as the hub via a contract. And then within each of these, the PEAs, the data lead person will either get their district, or they will extract and submit CalPADS data as well as assessment data. And the data that they submit comes straight from CalPADS, so there's not, they don't have to create special files or anything like that. This data comes from either CalPADS or TOMS. So once that's done, there's an automated process that calculates the indicators on the CORE data system. And then they're populated or actually they're handled through our partners at Education Analytics. These are the folks that are kind of behind all of the measures. They run all of the analysis behind the scenes. And that data is collected through a secure FTP share file site. The dashboard itself provides a common platform for participating LEAs to examine trends and benchmark performance against schools and LEAs throughout California. At its heart, the dashboard is designed to support continuous improvement at the school and LEA levels. It helps answer important questions on improvement, like how has performance changed over time? How does my school compare to other schools? What are the strengths and weaknesses in my district or school? What are we having the greatest impact on? And those are just some of the questions that the dashboard helps you answer. So now that you know a little bit about how CORE was created and what CORE is all about, let's dive into the actual dashboard. And later on, you're going to get a chance to actually dig around into the dashboard yourself, but I just want to review the different areas first. So once you get in, you're going to end up going to insights@coredistricts.org, and we'll revisit this again. You're going to click on the analytics dashboard, and then it's going to lead you to this area here, which is your the first page that you're going to see is the CORE index page. At the top of this page is your main options, where you'll be able to select your network, your district that you want to view, the school level, the school type, the school name, and the school year. For the school year, one thing to remember is that the year will only appear if data for the selected year is in the system. So it's very important to pay close attention to the school year. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is because we had such, there is no assessment data for 1920 school year. So when you're looking at 1920 dashboard results, they won't be as populated because there is no assessment data. So on the left side of the CORE dashboard this is the menu that you'll see. The options currently are CORE index. You have the LCAP, academic measures, on demand, preliminary college. Was there a question? Sorry. Okay. Somebody just had to mute themselves. No worries, all good. Happens a lot. Preliminary college, linked learning, which is going to be coming off, and external links, because we used to have a partnership with Linked Learning, so that area is being removed. The CORE index page is the first one that we talked about. Let's review that. So what you're going to see on this index page is your student population table, where you see your student counts, including your subgroup counts. One key thing to remember is the student population table is based on continuous enrollment. On the CORE index reporting page, you'll see the district name, your school name, the school code, and then the address that's associated with the school. When you scroll down the CORE index page, the second table titled Index Results, Academic Domain, you will see academic performance results or percent meeting or exceeding standards in ELA and math. And this is from the SBAC that I've highlighted here in yellow. The results are populated for the current year or the year that you're filtered to on the drop down. So if you are filtered to 2018-19, you'll see the metric result for that year, but you'll also see the prior year as well. So you're able to look at 2 years worth. You will also see the change or difference in metric performance from the prior year to the current year in the third column. The second to the last column is the CORE index level results with the values of 1 through 10. And the colors are green, orange, and red, where green represents above average, orange represents average, and red represents below average. Sorry, my husband's working in the background if you hear noise. So yeah, but first let's review what else is on the CORE index page before we go deeper into And actually, there's a change in the index level that I wanted to mention as well. So you'll notice the arrows that indicates if there was a change, an increase or a decrease or no change. So I'm just gonna show you where growth shows up, but in a few minutes, Noah is gonna do a deeper review of what growth is. But this is an area where you'll be able to compare your academic results to growth. And so I've highlighted the two areas here. You'll see the growth in ELA and math. And you'll also see the difference from the growth from the prior year, as well as the change and the index level. For middle schools, in addition to performance and growth measures, you will see the high school readiness indicator, which measures the percent of 8th graders who will be highly likely to graduate high school based on their GPA, grades, attendance, and suspension data. At the high school level, you will see the 4-year cohort graduation rate and the A through G completion rate. When you scroll down on the index reporting page, the next table you will see is the index results, social and emotional and cultural climate domain, which I've highlighted or circled here. This is where you can view the current year, prior year change in index level and change in index level for chronic absenteeism, for suspension rates, and for the survey-based measures for those that are participating in submitting data from the SEL and culture and climate surveys. So those aren't automatically show up. You have to be participating in those surveys in order for those areas to show. So one of the things that you can also see if you scroll down is the amount of improvement needed to increase index levels. And I'm going to talk about the index levels in just a few seconds. So here at the top, it says amount of improvement needed for the academic domain to increase by 1, by 2, and by 3 levels, if you look at the columns there. And then if you scroll down on the index core reporting page, you can view the subgroup performance by academic domain, social and emotional culture and climate domain, and then the racial, the additional domains are the social and emotional climate culture, racial, ethnic subgroup performance. So for example, you can see your chronic absenteeism rate and your suspension rate by racial, ethnic groups, subgroups. So like I said, I wanted to just highlight how the core index was created. So all measures on the core index reporting page have an index measure assigned to them. What we know about indexing is that it is a statistical measure of performance for a group of data points that allows for a quick and easy comparison by identifying a base year. So this is exactly what the core index is. The index allows you to explore schools and districts' strengths and challenges on a year-by-year basis, monitor student growth over time, review performance and compare similar schools, to create more of an apples comparison. Core reports and indexes indicators by school level, elementary, middle, and high. For schools that span multiple grade levels like K through 8 schools, results are reported for each school level and separately. And K through 8 gets an elementary report and a middle school report. The core dashboard shows index levels on a scale of 1 through 10, allowing schools to benchmark the metric levels against over 3,000 schools in the core. To also get a little deeper into the core index and other measures, you can view the business rules and cut points for each measure by clicking on external links on the left-hand side. And there is a resource document that has all of the background behind each of the measures on the dashboard. So what I wanted to do was just quickly review the academic domain one more time, because this is one that you guys are going to be doing later on your own. So the core index reports provides a multiple measures look at schools. So let's look at a school for an example. So this one is Adams Elementary. This will allow us to look at the percent of students meeting or exceeding standards right next to the academic growth data, which estimates the impact that the school, Adams Elementary, is having on individual student learning. In this screenshot, Adams Elementary's ELA performance has remained relatively flat, changing from 37 to 40% of students meeting or exceeding grade level standards. But that does not tell us the whole story. When we look at individual student growth for Adams Elementary in 2018, the ELA growth was at the 17th percentile. Representing below average growth. In 2019, the students grew at the 74th percentile, representing above average growth. In other words, the school went from having a below average impact on student learning to having above average impact on student learning. So that's quite a turnaround that we wouldn't be able to see if we were just looking at the academic measure. So I just want to do a little pop quiz real quick to see if you guys are paying attention. So the core index, and if you go ahead and put your answer in the chat box, the core index shows levels on a scale of what? Anybody in the chat box? 1 through 10. Exactly. And then where do you find the business rules and cut points for the core index? Anybody? Yes, external links. Great, great, great. And then the next one is, which menu option do you select to see index results by academic domain? Which is, it's okay, it's a core index. Okay, you guys, are there any questions? I think before we move on.
I did see a question about whether or not we calculate transiency rates in the core dashboard. We do, behind the scenes, one of the indicators the only indicator that we have that would help us sort of think about transiency is like whether or not a student is continuously enrolled. That's something that's sort of behind the scenes. It's in the data warehouse. And we are thinking about a project this year to look at different ways to consider enrollment. And one certainly interesting thing to think about is, what are the percentage of youth in a school overall and by student group who are continuously enrolled. And so that's just an interesting note. What you'll see in the business rules for some of our measures is that some of them include all students and others only include kids who are continuously enrolled. So when you look at like the academic measures, those are only kids who are continuously enrolled, consistent with the way the California dashboard does it. And so when you look at like the growth measure, or you're looking at the proficiency measure, we're only including kids in the school who were enrolled from October through testing, as we look at the the growth or the impact of your school. So I think the important thing to know is when you look at that growth measure, it's very much apples to apples in the sense of it's only including the kids who were really in a particular school for the bulk of the school year. When you're thinking about chronic absence or suspension rates, in those cases, we're consistent with the way the state has done those. So like with chronic absence, kids have to be enrolled in the school for 30 days. With suspensions, kids just need to have been there at any particular time.
All right, cool. Thanks, Noah. So let's move on. I just want to highlight the LCAP views. On the LCAP tab, you will have the option to look at an LCAP overview. There's a table that shows your 5x5 schools that looks very similar to what you get from the state. Excuse me, as well as a table that shows your LCAP 5x5 students. Then we have, if you scroll down on the LCAP overview, you'll be able to see your LCAP priority areas. So pupil engagement, priority area number 5, priority area number 6, which is school climate, and then priority area number 3, which is parent engagement. Notice that the green menu at the top left-hand side, this is where you can filter to certain student groups and or pathway for high schools to look at LCAP priority measures by additional subgroups. A key point to remember is that these LCAP views are estimates and become available, or used to become available in August, earlier than the California dashboard, but we're in a little bit of a weird year. So This is just highlighting the state academic indicator on the LCAP overview page. So you have your indicator for, or your distance from meeting standards in ELA and math, as well as the color, the dashboard color. One thing I also wanted to note was that there are additional tooltips. If you have a question about a certain measure, if you click on top or hover over the measure, you will see kind of a definition of what that measure is. So this one, I know it's hard to read. So I'm hovering over academic growth for ELA, and it says a school's or grades level team's growth percentile represents how they've done at moving individual students from point A to point B relative to schools serving similar youth. If a school has a growth percentile of 50, students have achieved average growth. Growth percentiles above 70 represent above average growth, and growth percentiles below 30 represent below average growth. So you can do that for most of the areas on the dashboard. Are there any questions before we move on? So we are going to go, I think we're going to go straight into growth and do a little bit of break after. Are you okay with that, Noah?
I'm ready to rock. And again, our goal today, because of the structure of this with such a large group, we thought let's get all the info out there first, and then we'll give you guys a lot of time to work in the actual data itself. And you'll see that we put you into rooms, and we're going to go jump around, and you can come find us, and we'll kind of do it that way.
There you go.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So one of the things that we've been supporting districts in doing since about the 15-16 school year is trying to understand individual student growth over time and how schools are doing in impacting kids' growth from point A to point B. And you know, this is a little bit distinct from what's currently on the California dashboard, although the state is working on a growth measure. It's not currently there yet, but what the core growth measure does is it answers the question, which schools and grade level teams have been having the biggest impact on student learning? So who's moving kids further faster? Status and change look at something different. So when you're looking at the California dashboard or even the core dashboard and you see a status measure or a change measure, they answer other questions. So a status measure tells you how much kids know and which kids know more than other kids and which kids know less than other kids. And so that's really important information, but it's different than growth. Growth is answering this question about impact. And one of the key things to think about when we think about a growth measure is we're looking at the student growth over time from where they ended last year to where they end the school year in question. And in the data today, you'll see that we have growth for your districts for 18-19 and for some of you for 17-18. For 18-19, we're looking at growth from the spring of 18 to the spring of 19. For the 2017-18, we're looking at the growth from the spring of 17 to the spring of 18. And we're looking, for example, how did fourth graders do in growing as fifth graders? So they ended the year as fourth graders, and then they end the next year as fifth graders. How much growth do these individual kids do? Change, on the other hand, looks at how last year's fourth graders did compared to this year's fourth graders. I'm going to explain this in a couple of ways. I'm going to do it first in a step-by-step way, and then I'm actually going to show you a video. We like the video because A, it's kind of nice and explains it, but also it's a takeaway, and you can use the video on your own if you're trying to remember or explain it to somebody else. So what we do each school year is we collect data from all across California. Again, we have about a third of California students in our data system. And in a given school year, we can make what we call a customized prediction about each student's growth. Another way to think about this is that we use what we know about each student to estimate how they would have done in a typical classroom. And so for each student, we do this analysis where we ask the question, how did this student's academic peers do on average across California, given their grade level, given their demographics, and given the peers around them? And so in this hypothetical example, we were able to estimate that the typical student in this grade level, say, grows 35 points. We adjust our prediction based upon we know about similar students who have economic disadvantage or who have a disability, or based upon the English learner status, the foster status, or the homeless status of the student. We also adjust our prediction based upon the peer effects. That is, who are these kids' peers? Are they in a school that is on average low income or high income, low achieving, high achieving? These things do impact student growth. And all of this is designed to help us estimate the impact of the school by isolating those things that are outside of the school's control. And so for each kid, we're able to make this customized prediction. We compare that typical or predicted score to the student's actual score. Some kids do better than their academic peers, and some kids do worse. Some kids do about the same. And then we aggregate that over all of the students in the school to estimate the growth. But to really unpack this for you, I'm actually going to show a little video that talks about this. It's a 2-minute video, and you can use this on your own as well.
Results on state tests give us important information about how much students know. But a single year of achievement results don't tell the whole story about a student's success. Academic growth measures individual student learning over time. It highlights which schools are having the greatest impact on accelerating student learning. The core academic growth model accounts for factors outside of a school's control in order to identify the impact that schools are having on student learning. Every school year, core districts collect student performance data. Then we look at the academic peers for each student to create a similar student's growth calculation for each child. To determine this similar student's growth calculation, the core academic growth model accounts for a student's prior test history, English learner status, disability status, socioeconomic disadvantage status, foster status, homeless status, and what we know about the student's peers in that school. Some students exceed similar student growth. Some fall short of the academic growth of similar students. The impact of the school is measured by looking for a pattern of student academic growth. In some schools, students consistently exceed similar student growth. In other schools, students grow at a slower pace than similar students. School academic growth results are reported on a 1 to 100 percentile scale. A school at the 50th percentile is growing student learning at an average pace compared to schools working with similar students. Academic growth above the 70th percentile means the school is having an above average impact, while growth below the 30th percentile means the school is having a below average impact. Growth provides important insights about where student achievement is being accelerated. If you are a member of the Core Data Collaborative, visit insights.coredistricts.org.
Great. So that is just a little explanation of how growth works. And again, we don't expect you guys to memorize this. That's why the video's there, and that's why we're here. And in a minute, we'll give you a chance to go into your own data. I do want to share, there are some additional resources here. So we've got the growth video. We got a lot of resources there for you. Let me talk about where growth shows up on the dashboard, though. And let me just see real quick. I think I saw something in the chat box. Great. We'll pause and take a couple questions. Okay, so to confirm the growth model is not based on a cohort, but student to student growth. That's right. So it looks at individual students' growth over time. So it's not comparing last cohort to this cohort. It's looking at it's looking at like in the 18-19 school year, we're looking at the growth of kids who are in your grade level or your school during 18-19, and the prior achievement for those kids, individual kids, we use as how they did in spring of 18. The one caveat on that is high school growth. For high school growth, we use their achievement from 3 years ago. We use their 8th grade data as the predictor. Small versus large populations in schools. So one thing that you'll see as I jump into the data, and in a minute I'm going to jump into it, and I'm going to demo from the dashboard itself, is that we only include growth data when we have at least 20 kids in a school or a grade level. And there's a couple of things on small populations. So one is that when it comes to extreme outliers, we use something called statistical shrinkage. Now, I'm not going to go too far into this. So for the statisticians out there, I'm happy to talk to you about this. But the way shrinkage works is it really is a method of trying to make sure that like some extreme over or underperformer doesn't overly sway the results in the model or the analysis. The other thing that you'll see is that on our school reports, we include something called the confidence interval. And the confidence interval you can kind of think of as like truth in advertising, especially if one were to use these data for accountability, not just for information. You'd really want to be statistically confident that a school is above or below average growth. And so that's where something called the confidence interval comes in. And the confidence interval concept is much like, what you'd see in a polling where they say, our best estimate is that, this particular candidate, is here, but, we have a plus or minus % on that. So let's go actually look then at the growth school reports and see what these look like. Team Visalia, hope you love me, I love you. I'm going to pick on you and just use a couple of your schools as an example here. Later you can, throw something at me or what have you. So there's 3 different reports here, and I think they're all really useful for different purposes. So the first report here is the school report. And I want to highlight again, like Latoya was saying, lots of tooltips. So if you're ever going to get lost, you can always try to look for one of these tooltips to explain it to you. So here I am, I'm looking at elementary school growth at Conyer Elementary School in the Visalia Unified School District. And I can flip between different schools here. One thing you'll notice is if I go to 1920, there's no growth data because we didn't have a test. So if you go to 1920, you're going to see no data. So I got to flip back to 1819 here. Overall, this is a high growth school. So overall, the kids are growing at the 86th percentile. And one of the things that we've done here to try to make this easier for you to interpret and to understand is if you scroll over these, there's a little tooltip that tells you how to read this. So the growth percentile is 86. Remember, it's 1 to 100. 86th percentile is above average growth. And in this case, students grew 13 scale score points more on average than similar students. So if growth was 50th percentile, you would be seeing that kids grew 0 scale score points faster or slower than similar kids. So kids who are above average growth, they're actually growing faster, and we translate that into scale score points for interpretation. 65, 65th percentile growth is considered in the range of average. It's slightly above average, but going back to this truth in advertising, you'll notice kind of a wide confidence interval there. And so generally speaking, growth between 30th and 70th percentile, we're not statistically confident that that's above or below average. The 65 is still our best estimate, and so slightly above average. But we generally color these kind of orange sort of average growth. Kids are growing about 5 scale score points faster than average. I do think, by the way, one of the most useful things for school leaders to look at when you're looking at growth is looking at these grade by grade reports. And this is from a couple of years ago, but you can reflect back on, if I was at Conyer Elementary School, I see that my strongest growth grade in ELA is my 5th grade team. I probably have a couple teachers there, and I'd be kind of curious, like, is there something significantly different about this 5th grade team? Do I have new teachers? Do I have a strong group of couple teachers there? Are they teaming together well? Your other grade levels are doing okay with growth, but their 5th grade team is really moving kids further faster. And again, on this school report page, you have the ability to scroll over these results and get this explainer. Down at the bottom, the same explainer is also here. For each grade level, we tell you about the growth estimate, the index level, the confidence interval, and the number of kids in the analysis. You can also flip back and forth on this particular page to math. Again, interestingly, look at that 5th grade team, 97th percentile growth in mathematics, making it one of the strongest impact 5th grade teams in the state, honestly. So, so here we have a 5th grade team who's really moving kids fast when it comes to their math learning. 6th grade and 4th grade, again, about average growth when it comes to how those teams are moving kids. So this is the school report. You can also look by student group here. The next report, I'm actually going to switch over to the ordered bar chart. This is a nice view for district leaders and also for school leaders to kind of see where your peers are at. This report has a lot of functionality to it. And so right now we're looking at elementary school growth in math for the all students group. And right now it's sorted by my highest to lowest growth in 18-19, and you can kind of see which schools have the strongest and weakest growth in 18-19 in mathematics. If you want to see who's actually improved their growth the most from 17 to 18-19, you can change this to look and see who's went up the most in their growth. So I'd be like really curious to unpack what is going on with Ivanhoe and Goshen and Oak Grove and Conyer and Pinkham. Is there something that you've strategically done as a school district at these schools, for example, in terms of curriculum or what have you, that has contributed to the significant improvement in how these schools are doing at moving kids? And so that you can sort here again to look at that piece. In terms of the change in growth. Growth is truly the impact of the school. So it's like if the growth is improved, the impact of the school is accelerated. There's some additional functionality here to look by grade level for any particular school. And even within a grade level or across the school, you can click down again to see different student groups. So lots of functionality in this chart. This is a nice one if you kind of want to really explore all the data across your district in terms of the growth data. So that's the order bar chart. The last thing I'm going to show you is we call this our power of two chart here. And this is where we're looking at growth and status together. And so growth and status are really important to look at together. Status data tells you how much kids know. So as we go up and down, this is the average distance to mean standards. This tells us in which schools did kids know more math than others. So the place where kids knew the most math was in Oak Grove. Hurley has pretty high status. Shannon Ranch, Hernandez, these are schools that with reasonably high status. Okay, so up and down is status. Low status schools, you know, you got a school like Goshen, low status, kids know less math here. So up and down, this is showing us how much math kids know. Left to right is how fast are kids growing. So if I look at a school like Ivanhoe or Goshen or Mountain View, these are all high growth schools. Kids are growing faster than their peers. I see low growth schools like Riverway or Annie Mitchell or Global Learning Charter. These are lower growth schools. Kids are growing slower than their peers. And the two pieces together are really important. So you have schools like Goshen where kids are behind, but they're growing faster than their peers. You have schools like Oak Grove where kids are doing well. They know a lot of math and they're growing faster than their peers. You have your kind of schools in the middle where school like Hurley, kids know a lot of math, but they're growing at about an average pace. We don't see in this case any cases where kids are growing fast, but they know more than their peers, but we do see that sometimes in the data. Let's flip over to ELA and see if that's the case. So this is a good example here, Oak Grove Elementary. Kids know a lot of ELA at Oak Grove, but they're growing slower than their peers. And then you have a school here in ELA like Highland where kids are far behind and they're growing slower than their peers. So this is another report here that we think can be really, really useful in understanding the growth data. And this is all in academic measures. You'll get a chance to explore that shortly. So that is the long and short on growth. I'm going to take a moment and pause to see if there are questions. I believe I meant to refresh my dashboard here, and then we'll do, right after I pause and take questions, we'll do a little 5-minute stand and stretch before we show you the last set of stuff, and then send you off into the data to have some data exploration fun. All right, well, what we're gonna do right now, we're gonna take 5 minutes, let this settle in. We're gonna come right back here at 9:53. We're gonna let everybody do a little quick bio break, get some coffee, get some water. We're gonna do about 5-10 minutes more of explainer, and then we are going to send you into a deep dive. All right. I'm going to do a brief commercial on one other place in the dashboard, and then I'm going to do a little bit of overview, and then we are going to send you off into the dashboard yourselves. So again, we're just doing a survey of this. As a reminder, lots of tooltips and slides to go look at if you're curious about things. But the next thing we want to do is show you this on-demand section. This might be a particular interest right now, given that there's a limited amount of 1920 data on the index page. The on-demand section is kind of interesting because it allows you to look over time at a number of indicators by any particular student group. And you get to see kind of like how does, I'm going to jump into Tulare County, and so you can change your network up here, and that will allow you to compare. You'll see if you change your network to Tulare County, and when I'm looking at any one of these indicators, I can compare. Overall is how the core data collaborative as a whole is doing on this indicator. So if we look at 1920, the in our data, chronic absenteeism was at about 11% overall. And then in Visalia Unified, it's about 9%. In the county, 8.7%. And then at this particular school, 7.9%. So the tooltip kind of shows you that. Some other kind of fun functionality, if you want this to spread out, you can kind of zoom in on it. If I want to get rid of the overall and I just want to look at less lines, I can click on it to look at find fewer lines. If I'm, let me jump up to middle school here. I'm going to jump up to middle school. Oh, look, this school, really high chronic absence. It looks like an alternative school of some kind. By the way, I don't know how y'all got your election news, but I watched a lot of John King, so I'm feeling a lot of. This is like my John King moment to be on the board here. A little election humor might be too soon, but okay. So you can change in this trends view. You know what school you're looking at. You can also look at a particular student group. So I might be interested in, you know, what does middle school chronic absence look like for my English learners? And so here now we see this school actually has a little bit higher than average English learner chronic absenteeism. But what's interesting is that the trends kind of came down, and then it's kind of bucked up a little bit last school year. And you can see those trends for any given metric relative to the collaborative. You can also download this to you know, a picture. These kinds of views are often used in board meetings and what have you to sort of show how a particular school is doing on an indicator relative to others. The next view here is something we call gap trends. So this allows you to look at the gaps for any given metric and any given student group. So let me, I'll pick a different student group just for interest. Let's look at our youth in poverty. So here we're looking at chronic absenteeism, and we're looking at the gap between kids who are in poverty, socioeconomically disadvantaged are the blue, and then kids not in poverty at the school or district or network overall are in the orange. And then down the bottom is the size of the gap. So we can see, for instance, for Divisadero, that in 16-17, the gap was 9.9% in chronic absence, where 17.1% of the kids who were socioeconomically disadvantaged were chronically absent. Only 7.2% of the kids who were not were chronically absent. And we actually see that over time, this gap has narrowed at this school, with slight increases in chronic absence for kids not socioeconomically disadvantaged and slight decreases for kids who are. And you can look to see if that trend plays out. Again, we see in Visalia Unified a decreasing gap in our kids in poverty, kids not in poverty. The county's kind of gone in a little bit of a different, you know, mixed trend, and you can kind of see what the trend looks like across the core data collaborative when it comes to this indicator. So again, this is a nice way if you really want to get a deep dive around a gap for a particular metric. I picked chronic absence, but I could also go up and I could look at another indicator like suspension rates, where we'll have the updated data for the school year. And so for this one, you can sort of, again, see like how do the suspension rates compare for kids in poverty versus not poverty. Or here I can come and say, gosh, I'm actually interested in suspensions as it relates to my students with disabilities. And you can see how those gaps have trended as well. So again, under On Demand, we have these additional reports. This is also where our reports are going to come for the map view when that goes live in a few weeks. All right. Okay. And then last thing I'm going to show you before we give you a couple of additional pieces of information is I'm going to show you, this is an advanced tool. This is our scatter plotting tool. And this is a nice tool if you're trying to find similar schools and on a couple of metrics. The super advanced tool, kind of for those of you that really want to go deep. And on this one, you can scatter plot any two metrics. I'm going to go and I'm going to look at I want to look at the 1920 school year. So let me just see what's going on here. Let me go back up to core index here and find a different school. Great. Let me go back to scatter plots. Great. So you can flip between the different school years, and not a lot to see in 1920. So let's go back down to 1819. And I want to look at, in this case, I've got, as you're seeing, this tool is a little more advanced, requires a little finickiness. So this is really for those of you who want to go super deep on something. So I can like scatter plot growth in ELA versus growth in math. And so again, any two metrics, you can choose whichever ones you want and scatter plot them together. And scatter plot means that I've got one metric on one axis and one on the other. And now I can see, okay, where are some schools that are high growth in ELA and math? And imagine I really want to find particularly a school that's like my school, and maybe my school is largely Latinx. And you can use these, you can drag these over. Yep, great. And you can use these toggles to drag over. Maybe it's like a really high poverty school, so I'm going to drag that over. So now I'm looking at schools that are high poverty, large Latinx population, and I can find the ones that are high growth in both. And low growth in both. I can highlight my district. So if I wanted to, sorry, Visalia, I've got you on the mind today. So I can highlight Visalia and see where the Visalia schools are here. I see one Visalia school here. I see another one here. I see another one here. And so this just allows you to kind of, oh, look at that. There's your Ivanhoe is up here, high growth in ELA and math with large youth in poverty. So again, that's a more advanced tool. So On-Demand has some more advanced tools, the metric trends, the gap trends, and the scatter plots. All right, so now you guys have kind of gotten in an hour around the core dashboard, and we're gonna let you jump in on your own in about, I don't know, 5 minutes. Just wanna highlight, we know many of you have been doing work around continuous improvement, and we take a continuous improvement equity-driven approach to understanding data. And these data are often very useful in doing what you call a system investigation or a root cause analysis. And the whole idea here is the data can help us really try to unpack and explore, why are we seeing variable outcomes for kids? We have all these inputs, we've got materials, we've got kids, we've got teachers, we've got curriculum. They all go into the system, and the outcomes we see for youth, and the data can help us explore that. Some of you might have seen this slide before that talks about the elements of continuous improvement. And we find that the data, what we're describing here, can be very helpful in understanding problems in the system that produces it, before you get into things like focusing your efforts, generating change ideas, testing and building evidence, and spread and scale. So these data are really helpful for kind of understanding the problem. What are the current outcomes I'm getting? Why am I getting those outcomes? So imagine, for example, that you were investigating chronic absence. You might look at a school. You might look at the performance levels on the index page. You might look at gap trends. Do you see challenges and strengths? Are there multiple indicators contributing to this challenge, or what have you? Do you see variation in your results? Is attendance challenges, chronic absence more pronounced in some groups than others? What do the trends look like? Is there a similar story over time? So the data can help you start to explore these things and then generate hypotheses. With growth, you might think about which schools are having stronger and weaker impact on ELA and math. Are some grade levels stronger than others? And then you might reflect on what's similar or different about those grade level teams. Do we have stronger educators? Do we have stronger curriculum? And some root cause analysis. So that's really what we want you to be thinking about as you explore these data. Think about them as a way to generate, improve your understanding of what's happening and generate hypotheses. So what we're going to do now, and I think I'm going to turn over to Latoya to talk you guys through this, is we're going to send you off into doing some exploration. We've got a little worksheet for that. For you guys to use, and we're going to send you into different rooms for that. But Latoya, I'm going to let you kind of walk folks through that before we send you off, and then we will be around to help.
Okay, so what we're going to do is give you guys some time to explore your data. I'm going to put the link in the chat box as well. You also have the link in the folder that we sent to you. And basically what we're going to do, oh boy, okay. My computer is really slow. I might have to stop sharing because it's, whenever I'm in Zoom, it just goes really slow. Let me just try it one more time. Okay, so let me back up. In the worksheet that you're gonna get, you're gonna have 4 different areas. You're gonna have 25 minutes. One of the areas is you're gonna look at overall school performance on the SBAC. You're gonna pick your district or school. You're gonna look at year-to-year growth. You're gonna look at trends over time from the on-demand menu. And then you're also gonna have some reflection time. And how you get to the dashboard is most of you should have received credentials to log in. So you're gonna log in at insights.coredistricts.org. If you don't have credentials, on the actual worksheet is generic credentials that you can use. I didn't list them here, but they should be in the worksheet. And then we can also put them in the chat box.
I'll put it in the chat right now.
Yeah, Heather will put it in the chat box for you guys as well. So once you're logged in, you're going to click on the analytics dashboard, and it's going to take you straight in. So what we're going to do is you guys can choose to explore in a group. And I believe Javier is setting up or has set up groups.
We got to pop into a number of your sessions, not all of them, but what we saw, people seems like they're starting to make their way through some data. Probably could use even more time. But we are going to just do a little bit of burning questions, and then we'll do another break. And then after the break, we have some additional data to share with you and some other tools. So we'll do that right after the break, and give you some more time to explore some data, some additional data. Maybe if you want to go back into the other data too. But let's just see, are there burning questions that have come up for folks? I know that in a couple of my sessions, folks were interested in some of the districts, some data holes. How do I fill them? How do I get high school growth? So we'll work with Javier and Latoya. We'll work with you guys to know what your data holes are to get more complete data in some of your cases. I talked to another group about the high school readiness measure, and at the end here, I'll say a word about where we're headed in on-track indicators, which includes a more refined understanding of on-trackness at grades 7 to 12. So I'll share a little bit about that in the post-break section of the day. So I see one question popping in. We'll let a couple others populate, and then we will take a little break, and then we'll come back and cover a few other topics. So the question I saw is there a way to follow a cohort of learners? So that's a really good question. I think we've talked about, like right now we report, like if you look at those line graphs, right now the line graphs are like by school year. You could also imagine reporting how kids in a particular cohort do as they advance in their grade levels. That's something we've explored, haven't done just yet, but certainly good to know that that's of interest. On the issue of SEL data, there's kind of two things on SEL. So one is in the core dashboard as it is, if you are interested in the indicators that are on the core dashboard, which use the annual core SEL and climate surveys. Those are surveys that kids usually take in the spring, February, March. And we'd be happy to have more folks participate in that. That looks at things like self-management and social awareness or what have you. And so that instrument is something folks typically give in the spring. So we'll make sure that Javier and Heather and Lori are well aware of that, can distribute those instruments. One of the things that we've learned through Rally is how to set those up to be done actually using Google Forms. And so one of the things that we can do is we can set up a Google Form way of doing that, which could make it easier for many of you to participate in that survey. And so we'll do that. I'll talk in this last hour about Rally. Rally is another spot where we're doing survey data. We have a well-being survey that covers a range of topics, from just general well-being to how kids are doing with each other to their level of engagement in school. And so that instrument is set up to work in our Rally analytics platform. And so at the second and the last hour today, one of the topics we'll talk about is Rally and how to get going on Rally. And Corcoran already has a school or two in there with some interesting data. And so we'll talk about that in the last hour. And that's something you can do through Rally sooner than later, by the way. So you could start doing the well-being survey in the next few weeks. You could start seeing data populate on the well-being side if that's something you're interested in. That's a different platform. We'll talk about that in the last hour, including how to get set up. So for the IABs, those are incorporated into Rally. So I'll show you that. We do report the IABs on Rally at the student level. The comprehensives would show up at the grade level and the classroom level as well, but not very many people use the IACs. And one of the things that we're working on right now is aggregating IAB data across a grade level or school is not as straightforward as you might think, because they're given at all these different times. Some schools give one assessment, others give another. And so we're right in the middle of thinking about, like, well, how do you effectively or appropriately aggregate IAB data? And so that's something we're researching right now. So yeah, again, Rally has the ability, and I'll show you guys Rally in the 11 o'clock hour to display IAB data. It's also where we're doing some research around IAB data, so more on that soon. I will make a comment, something that came up. Many of you are probably following the state board and the state board's decision making about testing this school year. The current decision is to do a shorter test. We'll see if that holds. We do have a new federal administration coming in that may have a point of view about that. And so we'll see if that holds. But assuming that holds, kids will take a short SBAC this spring. We are planning to run a growth indicator that will look at how kids grew from the spring of 19 to that spring 21 assessment. And assuming that's a decently done assessment, which we assume it will be with scale scores and all the rest, we will be able to run a growth measure on that. We'll also be able to report status. So we do anticipate running a 2-year growth measure. We have research going on about that right now across the country, actually, about how to think about that. There's different options, like, do we proportionally assign kids 2 school years growth to the 2 schools they went to if they went to different schools? That stuff we're sorting through right now. But we do anticipate that if kids do test in the spring on the SBAC, we will run a growth measure in the summer or early fall, depending on how quickly the data come back and how clean it is. So that is something we are anticipating doing. In the nearer term, though, I'll talk about Rally in a moment. There is the ability in the Rally platform to start looking at how kids are progressing relative to a typical school year. If you're using things like the IABs, or if you're using iReady or RenStar or MAP, those are the assessments that we currently bring into Rally, which I'll talk again about in the next hour. All right. Other burning questions in this moment? So we have some to-dos, though, some next steps. So one of them is we have an inventorying tool. And that inventorying tool will help us tell some of your districts, hey, by the way, Tulare County is killing it with data submission, doing amazing work, awesome job. But if there are some gaps, we'll communicate out what those gaps are, and we'll work on that with you guys. Also interesting to know, thank you for being a part of this. This now means that the county has a really rich data warehouse to start to do some exploratory work in the coming years. Obviously, we're very busy trying to keep up with the moment, but at some point we'll get back on a regular tread and be able to dig into that stuff. If you use a survey other than one of the core instruments, that's great. We're not really well prepared to bring that into our reporting systems, unfortunately. So the surveys that we are able to include in our reporting systems are our standard ones. That's just the scenario we're in right now. We see a future. We're not anywhere near there where any survey can come in. We're not quite there yet. We're focused on the kind of ones we have in common. All right, well, let's do this. It is 10:42. We've been, and feel free on your break to go look at more data, but let's take a 10-minute break. All right, well, in our last hour here, we're going to cover some additional offerings to make you aware of those. So one is what we're calling supplemental analytics. Most of your LEAs are in this, and if you're not, it's okay. We can get more data in and update these with your district in it. The second thing I'm going to talk about is, two areas where if your district's interested in more regular data and analytics, we've got two ways to support that. One is through something called EdFi, and we've got a chronic absence dashboard that already works, and then an on-track analytics dashboard on the way. And then the last topic I'll cover is Rally. So these will be the three topics we cover in our last hour here. So again, we're going to cover three additional pieces in this last hour. One is going to be around, and it's just, the slides are starting up, supplemental analytics, EdFi-based stuff, and Rally. To help make sense of the core data system, we spent the morning so far talking about our annual data system. Visalia is involved in our Breakthrough Success community, and they are doing this 9th grade on track work with us, and they've been uploading CalPATS-like files a few times during the year. In order to get updates around that, we're going to start updating periodic reports in the second half of the school year for them. And then we have something called EdFi-based data warehousing and dashboarding as well. And so these are our areas. I'll just be really transparent too. EdFi is something that, if that's something you're interested in, there is some additional cost per student on that. And then Rally is something we're providing at no cost during the 2021 school year to members of the Core Data Collaborative, including your district. So this is something you're interested in after today's session. This is something we can get going just within the confines of our current partnership. But let's talk about the supplemental analytics. So I'm going to actually switch over and show you guys how to look at this yourself. Knowing that things were a bit different this year, we offered some supplemental analytics. And I think Javier is emailing out this HTML right now. Did you get a chance to email that out, or is it great? If you're registered, you should have got an email with this HTML file. But just in case you didn't, let me show you how you can download and look at this file. If you go to our folder for today, if you right-click on this thing that says 1920 Data System Report, and you download it, if you just try to open it, it's not going to open right. So you got to download it, and it's going to download, and it eventually will pop up down here. This is an HTML file, which means it opens up on a website. So it'll open up like an Edge or Chrome or what have you. And it's currently downloading. And this is, again, some supplemental analytics that we did to try to help people see what was similar or different about the 1920 school year, particularly the spring, compared to prior springs. And maybe that gives you all some insight about things that you might want to do similar or different in the coming year, or that you're grappling with right now. So when you open this, it's going to open right up in your browser. And I'm going to walk you through the report, and then I'm going to let you guys do a little exploration. It should look like this. So if you're having trouble opening it, you can look at what I'm looking at right now, and or what have you. But it should open up like this, and again, it came through email and should open up in a browser. And again, this is a supplemental report, and I'll give you a chance in a moment to go look at some of the data. But we have a number of tabs here. The first thing we did here is we just, in this first report, we're comparing semester 1 and semester 2 grading for 1819 and 1920. So if you look, for example, at the percentage of grades that were A's in semester 1 for 1819 versus 1920, or really any of these grades, pretty consistent over across the county in semester 1. In semester 2, though, and this is TCOE down here, and this is the core data collaborative up here. If you look here at semester 2, you see that like there's a bit of a spike in semester 2A's relative to 1819, a little bit lower when it comes to the other grades, a lot more pass grades and what have you. And so what gets really interesting, I think, for all of you at school districts is if you go into some of these other tabs like pass, no pass, here we start to show some of the information by school district. And you can see which school districts kind of went from a policy-driven perspective towards like in this case, we're looking at pass, no pass, towards more pass, no pass grades, and which kind of stayed relatively similar in terms of the percentage of grades that were pass, no pass in semester 2. And down here below, you can actually see that by school. You can scroll over these and see all the schools, which ones had a lot more pass, no pass grading in 1920 versus 1819. And down here, we scatter plot it. So you can see, you got a school like Butterfield here, which had relatively similar amount of pass, no pass grading in semester 1 and semester 2. But then you get a school like El Monte, which had almost no pass in semester 1 of 1920, went almost entirely pass, no pass in semester 2. So these are, again, some supplemental analytics about pass, no pass grading. You also might be interested in similar analytics around failing grades. What were the percentage of grades that were failing grades in semester 1 versus semester 2? And so this will give you a sense of which schools had similar different rates of failing grades in semester 1 versus semester 2. Here we do semester 2, 1819 versus 1920. A lot more failing grades, as we can see in some schools. And here we scatter plot semester 1, semester 2 for 1920. In a minute, when I give you all a chance to pause and look at this yourself, I think this failing grades tab might be a great place to kind of spend a little time noticing. So amongst these tabs, I think like the failing grades tab might be a good place to kind of dig in, find your district, find your school. I will share there are a couple of tabs here that you might find noteworthy. One is like this cross tab of A to G grades. This is kind of interesting. So what we did is we said, okay, what was the grade in semester 1 on the left side here? And we did this for each district. And then also for the county as well. And then what were kids' grades in semester 2? So if I start here with Corcoran, I can see here are all the kids that got A's, and here is what those grades turned into in semester 2. So most of the kids who got an A in semester, these are all just for A to G courses. Most of them continued to get, and down here, by the way, is or up top is here we go. Here's the legend. And we can see that, most kids kept their A's and some got B's, and a very small percentage got a D or an F down here. But you can see then what happened with kids who got Fs, what happened to their grades in semester 2. So anyway, kind of an interesting way to explore the data. How did grades change from semester 1 to semester 2 in these A to G courses? So that's this A to G tab. And then we also showed a little bit of what's happened with suspension rates. Suspensions generally went down when we compare after February 29th or versus before February 29th. And you can look this up by district if you want to. And then some chronic absenteeism data across the school years. We're generally seeing that chronic absence rates were lower in 1920 across most districts, not all districts. This is average days of enrollment were lower. And then you can kind of see how average days of enrollment were different. And then down here at the bottom, you can see what happened with chronic absence, excuse me. Should read the titles. So lots of data in here. I'm going to, again, there's a lot of data in here. I'm going to encourage you guys to do your own little exploration here, either focusing on pass, no pass practices or failing grades. And how was semester 2 of 1920 kind of different than prior years? And so I want to give you guys like, let's take a few minutes to explore here. And I want to give you like, well, let's take 7 minutes to kind of explore this data. We'll come back at 11:10. And when we come back, I'm going to ask people to chat some things they noticed, just factual things that they noticed. But for right now, I want to encourage everybody to go ahead and open this HTML file. Hopefully it opens in your internet browser. And again, lots of tabs here, but I'm going to encourage you to focus either on failing grades or pass, no pass grades. Take a minute, look at it, explore it, see if you notice anything of interest. All right, so I will pause and let you guys do that. Many of the outliers were our community or alternative schools. So when you looked at when Julie probably was looking at our schools that have our higher failing rates, they might have seen a lot of alternative type schools there, for example. Yeah. Even in those though, I mean, it's interesting to see that like the fail, just generally you can see the trend has been different. Great. Any other noticings? Feel free to jump them in the chat box. Maybe we'll take one or two more.
I was asking, in the graph that you were in for the comparing percent of failing grades from 1819 to 1920, and because the way it's set up here on this web version, we're not able to see all of the schools. And is there a way that we can extract this information so we can create a chart of our own, or if something that you could do on your end, so we can do some comparisons of similar schools? Yeah,
that's a good question. So I was just kind of looking to see, we have the districts here with some counts. Let's, if not, I'm sure we can get the file over to Javier and co.
I was looking at the failing grades one. That's what I was looking at.
Yeah, let's see if we can get you guys an extract. So let's take that as another follow-up and get an extract together of this and see if we can shoot that over to team Tulare County, Lori, Javier, Heather.
I just know that's something that we look at, when we're comparing data, what are other schools that have, higher, trends on the higher performing area, but that are similar. We can't compare ourselves to a larger school.
That's great. Yeah. So we'll this is all sitting in a, data table somewhere. So we'll work on getting that into like an Excel kind of a version and over to the team Tulare County. It's great. And again, so by the way, so this was something that we did this fall, what we do try in the Core Data Collaborative to sort of see like, what's going on in the moment and how can we do something a little different than what's in the standing dashboard, just because sometimes there are questions that our standard metrics don't answer. And so that's why we did this piece. So this is a little supplemental thing that we did this school year. The last thing I'm going to invite folks to do is just to reflect for a moment, as you're thinking about comparing yourself to similar schools or districts, curious for folks to take a minute, reflect, and maybe a few brave people will jump something into the chat box. What hypotheses do you have about this? What questions does it raise? I'm curious about what's going on, for current practices. To what extent is your district or school reconsidering its grading practices in the COVID environment? So take a minute, reflect on this. If you were in a room, I'd ask you to share with an elbow partner, but we're not in a room, so a few brave souls want to jump in some hypotheses, questions, things you're thinking about right now as it relates to grading. I'm sure your colleagues would appreciate seeing that. So feel free to jump that into the chat box. We'll take a few minutes for you guys to continue exploring, and at your leisure in the next 3-4 minutes, if folks want to jump in some questions, hypotheses, thoughts, reactions into the chat box, we invite brave souls to do that. Great. All right, we'll give it a little moment here, see if any other thoughts are coming up. Interesting. Jennifer, I'd be curious to call on you if you'd be brave to talk a little bit about this piece around the validity of assessments during distance learning. What is it that you're hearing out in the world?
I didn't mean to stop my video like I was hiding.
No, it's all good.
So we've been just meeting with sites and districts, and that just seems to be the concern, that as students are not in person, the structures that we have in a typical classroom are not the same. And so our parents assisting with these assessments and just even like looking assessments in general, what can we do if we're doing like a star reading assessment? Is that going to be valid when you have mom and dad or big brother, big sister in the room?
Yeah, we're actually, so that's one of the things that we're unpacking right now. We do have a decent amount of assessment, RenStar, iReady, map data from across the state, not a ton, but a part of what we're exploring is the growth of students from fall to fall, this fall to fall, similar to prior fall to falls. And we do see the younger grades, like the super younger grades, sometimes kids are actually doing a little better than they have in the past. I haven't gotten into all the different assessments just yet. It looks like we're seeing more evidence of the learning loss as you get into upper elementary and middle school. But it's quite possible the younger kids, mom, dad, sister, brother, uncle, are helping out. And I would also imagine for teachers, just giving a quiz is different in this environment, or giving an end of unit assessment. There's a bit more trust that needs to be given to the student. Although there's some technology I gather for basically the teacher being able to go in and look at kids are doing on their screens. And anyway, but yeah, no, that's interesting. That what a grade means is a little different potentially today than it has been in the past. I'm hearing districts also just doing a lot of grade policy review right now. Some places that are reviewing whether or not, if they use a 0 to 100 scale, maybe a missing assignment always gets a 50 instead of 0. Things of that nature to decrease the impact of missing assignments. So those are some things that we're seeing around the state as well. Great. All right. Well, so those are some supplemental analytics, some more information for you guys as you start to explore. I'm now going to spend a little bit of time talking about two additional offerings. One is our Rally Analytics platform. And as I mentioned before, this is something we're offering to any core data collaborative district for the 2021 school year, if it's something that you'd like to get going on. And we're prepared to take folks throughout the school year in this platform. I'm actually going to stop share and reshare so that I can show a little video. Yeah, because they do a little better job showing video if I've got it on here like this. So some of you may or may not be familiar. Rally is our solution and support for this recovery and reentry period when it comes to trying to, I stopped and reshared, but forgot to do the way I wanted it to. It's our support tool and solution for really helping with this recovery and reentry phase that we're in right now, and looking at how kids are progressing in their academics as well as from a well-being perspective. Bringing a really strong equity lens to the tool as well. Yeah, so that is kind of the focus of this Rally tool. So I'm going to show a little video, and then I'll also do a little bit of demoing, and then I'll answer questions folks might have.
The Rally Analytics platform includes teacher and principal views of class and student level data, including historical and recent student academic performance on summative and interim assessments. Rally also provides estimates of where students would have scored in spring 2020 had they actually taken the test during a typical school year. Rally's predictions for future summative and interim assessments will update once students take assessments this school year. The platform also incorporates student well-being survey data when available and a toolkit of classroom management tools to enable teachers to better understand their students' context and plan for instruction. The Student View contains high-level and detailed information about each of your students and provides you opportunities to reflect and take notes about each student. There are 5 sections on the student page. The first section allows you to select your student, view quotes from the student if they took their well-being survey, and take a quick note. The At a Glance section summarizes a student's well-being survey responses if the survey was administered in your district, and English language arts and math assessment data. The Details section shows more detailed information about survey responses for student well-being. If the survey has not yet been administered, the well-being components of this page will be grayed out. For ELA and math, the detail views show an assessment snapshot with historical assessment data prior to learning disruption, and then displays the student's predicted performance to provide a baseline to compare with future assessments. Beneath the assessment snapshot are more detailed data tables showing the student's performance across specific domains of an assessment. The class view offers summary information about your class's well-being and academic data. There are 3 sections on the class page. An at-a-glance section that summarizes your class data for well-being and academic performance, including historical data. A detail view of well-being or academic data that enables you to drill into survey and assessment subscores. And a class roster that allows you to view student performance levels and sort by those subscores. You can also create groups, such as mixed ability groupings, or for differentiated instruction groups based on the academic domain. Alongside student data displays, Rally also provides a teacher toolbox with resources to better plan for your class instruction. A student notebook is available for you to take notes about each student while examining their academic and well-being data. You can access the notebook for each student from each of the data views and have the option to share notes with other teachers that have access to that student. A group manager to edit and update groups you've created on the classroom page or create new groups. An Information and Resources Hub provides instructional resources and activities centered on particular academic domains or constructs of student well-being.
Okay, so that's a little bit about the Rally platform. As you saw there, Rally is a tool that, we are providing to members of the Core Data Collaborative. We have about a dozen districts at different stages of starting to launch this. A couple in Tulare County, Corcoran and Liberty are on the. Corcoran's already done a little bit of sampling this with a teacher or two, and then Liberty we're very close to doing some, stress testing or QCing with them to make sure they're feeling good and they can start to use it with their teachers. So this is a tool that's available to y'all, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But let me just there are a series of additional videos that folks can watch about the platform. Logistically, as you saw, Rally uses a few different data sources in it. We've got your assessment data, the survey-based data, which I can actually, since we did have questions about the survey stuff, why don't I jump in and show you guys a little bit more detail about what the survey reports look like. And then on the assessment side, what we bring in is, again, iReady, RenStar, MAP, and then the IAB data. And then we do some work to kind of bring your roster data in, so the rosters are all right for the teachers, and then we set up single sign-on. So there's a little bit of startup work to it, but definitely manageable. I'm logged in right now as a school leader, and because I want to show you guys a little bit of the data here. Earlier, we were talking about survey-based data. So we have this well-being survey that you can give. And on the right here is where you can look at your interims and your state summative data. So that's over here on the right. This is the classroom view, so I can see kind of aggregate for my classroom. On the survey side, down here, here are all the different survey items. We have a set of items that look at personal well-being, like how often did you feel happy or hopeful or sad or worried? When you need help, I can find somebody to talk to. So we have this for different topics. We have a version of the well-being survey that's more for just throughout the year, not as much about last year. So that's the one folks are doing mostly right now. Down here at the bottom, when we're looking at the survey-based data, you can look at how each individual responded to a particular item. You can sort your kids to find out, who's struggling on an item. There's also a grouping function that you folks probably saw in the video. Yes, that's what's down here at the bottom. And then if I want to jump in and look at a particular student, I can do that. So why don't we just, pick out Jared here. And Jared's specific responses are up here at the top around their quotes. They're at a glance in terms of the well-being is here. 6 of 20 items are what we call assets to build on, 5 of 20 in between, and 9 of 20 check in to learn more. We have their most recent interims here, which we can flip between. One of the things that we've included throughout the platform are these equity pauses. All part of real strong equity lens on this part of which is about looking at the whole child and really bringing the student to life, but also taking a moment to pause and reflect as you look at data. And so these equity pauses are scattered throughout, and they have sort of a inspirational quote and then a little bit of an exercise to do when you're looking through the data to really help us turn on our more thoughtful brain away from our more reactive brain. So these are embedded throughout as well. On the student well-being side, at the student level, you're able to see all of their responses, which include quotes as well as specific responses on each item. And I heard we were reviewing this with the high school principal, and she was talking about how for her teachers, sometimes they have 150 kids, and this really lets the teachers get a better sense of each individual kid in a more rapid way. And maybe identify some kids to follow up with and engage more with. So they can sort of look at each individual student this way. The other thing I'll note is, throughout the tool, we've got lots of information, tooltips and what have you. So if I'm back and I'm looking at if I'm here and I want to learn more about the surveys, I can click on this. It actually takes us to this well-being guidance document, which some of you might find really interesting because it has some pretty interesting tools and materials in it, just in general around well-being. And my chat box went away, but I will chat this to you guys later. But yeah, so it has about the survey instruments and what the items are. But down here at the bottom, there's actually also information about what each element of the survey is, what topic is it, and then some what can I try now with my students information about different topics around well-being. So kind of a useful tool there that's embedded inside of this dashboard. All right. And great. Back here. And it's sharing. The other thing I'll show you here on the academic side at the student level is, the ability to kind of look at a student over time. And you'll notice as we have information about each of the students' interim assessments that they've taken. These could be IABs, they could be Ren Stars, they could be iReadies, MAP tests. We're converting them all to SBAC scale. There are summative assessments, and then we're projecting out how they did during the year. They would do during a typical year. And if the student has taken a benchmark assessment, we'll see them, and let me see if I can find one that has this. We'll see how their projection now compares to what it would have been like during a typical year. All right, so let me see if I can find a good example here. All right, I'll try just a couple more times and then I'll give up, and I can show you a video that has this information. All right. Well, if the student had taken a benchmark assessment during the year in question, we would be able to see how that current benchmark assessment looks compared to a typical year. And so again, for a school leader, they're able to flip around to different classrooms in their school. A teacher gets to just see their classrooms. At the teacher level, they're able to look inside of their classroom on a given interim, for instance, and see kind of the range of how kids have done, and then how specific students have done as well on these assessments. All right, so here's a good example. This student has taken an interim, and you can see they're projected to do slightly better than they would have done in a typical year. And so that's the kind of thing that you're able to see as kids take assessments during the school year. All right. So so that is a bit about the Rally Analytics platform. And again, we got a couple districts in the county that are working towards launching this. And if others are interested, that is available to you as well. And there's some information in the slide deck about how to get started. Some of you actually started and paused. So right now in Corcoran, for example, we actually have set up teachers with Rally. And so if they log in today, they'll be able to see their classrooms, I believe. We focused on a particular middle school and launching it. If a district level person wants to have access, the lead in Corcoran, I'm dropping who the lead is right now. I think Tanira might be on though. Tanira, are you on? Is that right?
I think she dropped off.
She dropped off. Okay,
Yeah.
great. The lead in Corcoran has the ability to add other district level users as well. The surveys, so in order, if folks are interested in Rally, feel free to just either email us or there's an interest form here in your slide deck on slide 117. I now do have access to that, to the chat box again. The well-being information is all in here. So it has like our whole guide and stuff like that. If you're interested in getting on a Rally in particular, there's the interest form, or you can just email us and we'll be happy to kind of get you on track with trying to launch Rally. Let me pause and see if there are any questions coming up about the Rally Analytics platform for folks. Any additional questions, feel free to put it in the chat box or just type out loud. All right. So again, the interest form is here for those who are interested. And yeah, so not a huge startup process. It takes a little bit of effort, but not a terrible amount, and allows you to look at these interesting, useful reports. Again, when it comes to the well-being survey, which I will make sure that we distribute afterwards, we have it one of two ways to implement the well-being survey. If you work with Panorama, Panorama is providing that survey for free as part of your Panorama participation, and they send the data directly to us. If you're not working with Panorama and your district uses Google for like kids to log in, you can do it through Google Forms, and that's the kind of the free way. And kids simply log in and take it under their district Google email, and we're able to link that back to their IDs and bring it into Rally that way. So those are your options there. All right, the last thing I'll just do kind of a brief thing on is CORE's been working on, and this is the piece that in Visalia, if Visalia wants to start providing your 9th grade on track data this way, you can. This is called EdFi. But for other districts and other schools, this is an additional piece. I think it's $250 a student. Is to get into regular attendance analytics and dashboarding, and in the spring are on track work and going forward as well. And so we did a bit of work to try to understand, what kinds of use cases folks have around attendance data, and we're sourcing the data through something called EdFi. And what's different about that from our current data system? So right now, we do annual data using CalPADS files. You upload them and we process them onto the dashboard. With EdFi, we're regularly getting data daily or weekly from your student information system. It's a little different than other data vendors in that we're using a data standard called EdFi to do this. EdFi is a national data standard, and it has open source tooling, which is why it's a bit less expensive than your typical data dashboarding tools. And we go through a data mapping process where we map the different fields in your student information system to the standard, and then we press go and correct some errors, and eventually we get to a place where we're able to automatically push data into a data warehouse and on the data dashboards. we so far have done this with Aries and Power School and are working on our first Synergy district, and also have the ability to do this with Infinite Campus. So this is the EdFi system, and what's cool about it is, this data dashboarding on a more regular basis in data warehousing. And so, for example, this is might be a little small on your screen, but this is like our dashboard when it comes to attendance, and this is like a drillable dashboarding tool where the user can filter on different things, look at particular schools or particular student groups, and then look at, what does chronic absence look like right now? How does that compare to this time last year? What are the different categories of attendance using the attendance works categories of satisfactory, at risk, moderate chronic absence, and severe chronic absence? These are drillable to look then at the student level and to be able to see each student and what their attendance looks like, how it compares to prior years, and what have you. We also have the ability to look, every 10 days, what does your chronic absence look like this year compared to this time last year? So you can see whether your trend is similar, and also an attendance rate trend as well. Also in this tool is the ability to look at the chronic absence and attendance rate trends by student groups. There's not pictured here, but I can show it in a different view, is also looking across your district at attendance rate. So this is one of the dashboards that's kind of pre-built, and I will stop share and reshare and share this particular piece. And so again, this is like a PDF of the dashboard, and you'll see kind of the organization I was describing before. All right, control. Great. Zoomed in a little bit here, and down at the bottom, also looking kind of across schools. So which schools have different rates of different kinds of attendance across a district. So this is based in EdFi. It's our attendance dashboard. It's kind of, once we've gone through the EdFi process, it just kind of works. So that's chronic absence. The next area of work that we're doing with EdFi, and EdFi districts will have access to both of these things, is our work around on-trackness. And so I'll just do, this will be my last share for the day, is just to give you a heads up on where are we in the world of on-trackness. We've been working for the past couple of years around predictive analytics and on-trackness, and we've kind of identified that students fall into one of 5 lanes of on-trackness. Some students are in our post-secondary competitive lane. These youth are almost certainly going to graduate high school A to G and are most strongly prepared for college success. We have kids in kind of a post-secondary promising lane, 9 to 10 chance of graduating A to G, very likely to be successful in college. Our kids are kind of in the middle. They're about a 1 in 2 chance of graduating A to G. They're almost definitely going to graduate high school. We have our kids with a 4 in 5 chance of graduating high school, 1 in 5 chance of graduating A to G. Those are our vulnerable kids. And then we have our highly vulnerable youth, who are 50-50 odds of graduating high school and low odds of A to G. The way that we're starting to report and analyze and articulate that is through a points system. We've done, using our predictive modeling, we've identified that you can kind of think about in a 9th grade, for example, distribution of points that looks a little bit like this. A bunch of the points for A to G performance, some points around total credits, attendance, and overall GPA. One of the big parts of this is, and this is an analysis that we're looking forward to providing some reporting on later this school year, is trying to unpack what's happening in terms of the course taking by subject area that we see in your schools. In middle school, we're looking at ELA and math course taking. In high school, we're looking at all the A to G course taking. And we see that in high school, we have some courses that you might consider to be like at a high level, some at a medium, and some at a low. Higher level courses are automatically your AP, IB honors courses, also accelerated course taking like Spanish 2 in 9th grade. But then we also sometimes see what we call hidden honors classes. These are classes that might not be labeled as honors, but when we look at the composition of students in that course, it's clear to us that these are kids who on average are doing a lot better than other kids in the district. And so sometimes they're not labeled as honors, especially in 9th grade, but you can see in that course code that it tends to be kids that are higher performing kids. And so they're kind of like our hidden honors courses. And then we have these, most courses fall into the medium category. Sometimes we do find low course taking, still A to G, but maybe it's decelerated course taking. It's a 11th grader taking Algebra 1. And then we also find that sometimes we'll see courses that are cases where kids are on average lower performing that are in that course. Like sometimes we'll see a special day class A to G course. It's still A to G, but it's got special day class students, tends to be kids with less likelihood of success in terms of graduating A to G. I won't go through this in detail, it's in the slides, but we've turned all of this into kind of a point system that allows us then to look at these levels of on-trackness. And so this is, for example, the 7th grade point system, where we multiply the level of the course times the grade the student gets. And then we also look at things like their non-math, ELA, GPA, et cetera, and constructing these points. If we skip over to 9th grade, that's a place we're paying a lot of attention right now. You can see how the different weights play in, and different A to G subjects have more weight based upon what our predictive model tells us. ELA has a really high weight, and then the combination of math and science kind of compete with ELA in terms of its importance. And then you get more weight depending on whether it's a low, medium, or high course. And then we also include your overall GPA, attendance, and credits, and looking at your on-trackness. And then we use all of that to sort of to identify what lane students are in. And this is what we're going to be dashboarding later this spring in our EdFi-based data. So we'll be able to do things like, what percentage of kids are vulnerable or highly vulnerable? What percentage of kids moved up a lane? And all this being drillable. One of the things that we found particularly useful, and I'll pause on this one for a moment, is it's useful to kind of know, like, where did kids start as 8th graders in terms of their on-trackness, and where are they now as 9th graders? Or where they start as 7th graders, where are they now as 8th graders? Which kids are moving up? That's the green. Which kids are vulnerable? That's the purple. And then all of this being drillable so that schools can really look at different groups of kids and tailor interventions to the different groups of kids that they're supporting. So this is some work. If you're interested in getting more into regular analytics, the EdFi is the way to do that. If you want to go deeper on this offline, we're happy to set that up. And again, these are drillable, so you can kind of see, how strong is each student's schedule, how many points have they earned in these different areas, and then on their go super deep around what their grades in their courses today, and how is that playing into their on-trackness. We just wanted to close today with highlighting some of the EdFi work and some of the Rally work, just because we knew some folks were interested in those things, and letting you know that those are areas that if you're interested, please do reach out. We're happy to follow up with you to get you going on those pieces as well. Well, great. That is pretty much the content for today. We do want to pause to see if there are any additional questions before we wrap up our session today. Hope you enjoyed this part. We'll wrap up by reminding folks that we do have an event on the 20th. We'll have some great speakers. We have some breakout sessions. You get to do roundtable discussions. A couple of topics that we'll be covering include things like, how are people tracking attendance and engagement? How are people using learning management systems? So if you want to see some examples of how districts are doing that, that's something that we'll be doing. You get a chance to do roundtable discussion around that piece as well. But yeah, so questions about Rally or EdFi or on-trackness. Big ups to all of you for your endurance, by the way. I heard something, yes.
Yeah, this is Hizkia from Visalia Unified.
Hi.
So, can we do the attendance tracking for Visalia Unified?
Yeah, so like Visalia is in a unique spot because you guys are part of our Breakthrough Success community. And so instead of doing file-based data transferring, you could be transferring your data using EdFi. And if you did that, we would automatically start showing the high school that's involved in the BTSC. And if we wanted to expand out to other grade levels or on their chronic absence, we could do that as well. So Hiskia, we'd be glad to kind of get that process going with you guys.
All right, I'll contact you after this then. Thank you.
Perfect. Others with a question, thought, reaction, thing for the good of the order. Again, massive endurance on this day with us here. And Latoya's remind folks that lots of information is here. We know that Javier and Lori and Heather are really interested in following up with districts that want to go even deeper on these data, schedule separate one-offs with you. And so pause for just another 30 seconds here, see if there are any burning questions, and then I'll turn it over to Team Tulare to wrap us up today.
Yeah, thanks to both of you, Latoya and Noah, for joining us and guiding us through all of this today. And to all of you guys who are still on the call, please do see if you can make that November 20th event. I think that'll be a good supplementary bookend to this. And if we have the flyer available or the links available, the Stephanie Evergreen event is coming up. We'll go ahead and add that there. Thank you, Heather. But appreciate you guys hanging in there with us today and investing the time to learn as much as we can about the CORE dashboard, Rally, and some of the other tools that the awesome team at CORE has for us today. We want to thank you guys all for coming, and we'll see you guys soon.